I bet. I bet y'all missed wearing these. Guess why you might need these today? Because we're doing a lab. We're not actually going to need these to do the lab today. But we are going to need our eyeballs, and we are going to need to follow directions really carefully, because if you skip a step, you'll be confused. Here we go. For today's lesson, for today's lesson, we're going to do 2 notebook pages. The first one is I can track and record the passing of traits through 3 generations. Look at this. It looks a lot like a family tree, and it is. These are the grandparents, grandparent 1, grandparent 2. This is their son. This is their daughter. And the son and daughter get together, and they have 4 children. So we have grandparents in generation 1, parents in generation 2, and grandchildren in generation 3. And what you're going to do is you're going to follow the directions in the lab, and then you are going to try and figure out, of the 4 offspring from generation 3, how many inherited a trait from the generation 1 grandparents. So like if they inherit any of these traits. So our traits are represented by letters. So this grandpa has all A's for his trait. This grandma has all B's for her trait. This male has all C's. This female has all D's, right? So then the offspring here are going to get 3 A's and 3 B's. The offspring here are going to get 3 C's and 3 D's, right? Because they're half on chromosomes, so that you get half of your traits from your mom and half of them from your dad. Okay, so the next thing you're going to look for is it possible for a generation 3 offspring to not inherit a particular trait? If you get stuck, of course, there's a little extra video, and then you can look at your learning targets, and it will totally help you. Okay, our next notebook page is, and by the way, you don't have to draw circles to create this table. I printed some of them out for you, or you can just leave them without circles and just like draw some lines and write the letters where the circles might be. Don't worry about the art part. I said art part, I rhymed. Okay, our next lab is on page 90. So on page 90, our next learning target says, I can collect data and use a Punnett square to predict the genotype and phenotype percentages in offspring. That sounds like we're going to need our goggles. That's a lot of science. Collecting data, using Punnett squares, predicting, big word genotype, big word phenotype. Oh my gosh, and math to figure out percentages. Don't worry. I kept it easy for you. So all you need to do is make sure that you really, really, really follow the directions. On this one, you can do it with a couple pieces of paper and a pencil in order to determine genotypes and phenotypes. Remember, genotypes are the letters, right? We're going to look at little monsters, and if there's a monster with 1 hair, it's dominant, and if it's a monster with 2 hairs, it's recessive. Remember, you have 1 hair if you have a dominant trait, and you can only get 2 hairs if you have 2 recessive traits together, right? So the genotypes are the letters, the phenotypes are the physical characteristics. So it's either going to be 1 hair or 2 hairs. Okay, so, and then you'll figure out the percentages with 1 hair and the percentages with 2 hair from this data. So like how many out of 8 offspring are going to have 1 hair, and how many out of 8 offspring could have 2 hairs, okay? And then this is literally from your lab, but you need to take notes. This is the piece you need to write down so that when you submit, because you have to submit an assignment today, when you submit, you can refer to these so you have the correct answers before you actually do your Google form, and then you don't have to switch flipping back and forth from screen to screen to see your answers and worry about copying and making a whole nother Punnett square. So just follow the directions really carefully and you'll get it, okay? No videos today, just trying to figure out where the genetics are going and coming from, and where they can be, and where they're dominant and recessive, and if you can tell the difference between a genotype and a phenotype. Lots of practice here, 8 of them. And then whether or not you can calculate a percentage. So remember, when you calculate a percentage, it's really just For this one, it's how many of these siblings out of 8 did something. So if it's 4 out of 8, it's 50%. If it's 2 out of 8, I don't know, it's 25%, okay? When you do a percentage for a Punnett square, you only have 4. So if it's 1 out of 4, it's 25%. If it's 2 out of 4, it's 50%. If it's 3 out of 4, it's 75%. If it's 4 out of 4, that's all of them, 100%, which is what I'm expecting you to get on your labs today.